Welcome back to SuperWest on Sundays, everybody. Joining me, as always, is fellow senior writer Stephen Vilardo. I'm Nick Bartlett, and I'm a senior writer here at SuperWest Sports as well. Unfortunately, we are without our assistant editor today in Dane Miller. He's had a really busy week, so he should be back next week. But we still got some games to talk about, and just a lot of interesting action here in the SuperWest region. Some unexpected results, some kind of expected results, and yeah, let's just get straight to the games today. I don't got a too lot. I don't got a too much more here. So, first game we're going to talk about is going to be UNLV versus Kansas. And Steve, what was your takeaway from this game?
I picked UNLV to win, and so it really wasn't necessarily surprising. The way it's happened was surprising, and the way that kind of UNLV has won games this year. Especially the two big ones. Obviously, the FCS school, they just kind of ran all over it and destroyed. But but they've been doing it with defense and running the football, which is just a little bit of a kind of a shock to me. But they looked. Obviously the defense looked really good against Kansas, made some big plays when they needed to. They forced a couple turnovers, creating 10 points off of those, so that was good. They the two interceptions of Jalen Daniels, who's a very good quarterback as well. And he got his running going a little bit 11 for 65 for Daniels, and Devin Neal was on the ground. So Kansas can run the ball. They're good. They're a good Big 12 program and one of the top teams in that conference. And UNLV, held their own and ended up with the win. The thing with like Matthew Sluke has got to start throwing the ball a little bit though. I mean, no matter and it's I don't want to nitpick him after a huge win on the road against the Big 12 team, but Sluka just completed 39% of his passes. Ricky White, he might be the most talented player on that team, and I think he had 3 catches for 4 yards the other day in that win. Uh, so it's kind of a twofold thing. You can beat a really good team on the road, and your best player is quiet, and you basically did it without throwing the ball. But I think eventually one day UNLV is going to have to throw the ball this year to kind of meet some of the goals I think that they want. But Sluka made plays with his legs. I mean, he ran for 124 yards, and he had some big runs down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And that line, the offensive line for UNLV just kind of dominated Kansas, especially down the stretch in the fourth quarter when they needed to. They had a couple fourth and ones in there, fourth and goals on the same drive. I think they picked up a fourth and one, which would have set up a first and goal from like the 3 where they could put the game away, but a 15-yard penalty moved them back. So then they kind of had to do the exact same thing over again about 3 more times. And they asserted their will, and UNLV is a good team, and I think UNLV, Fresno, and Boise this year have really separated themselves from the rest of the conference so far. And I think almost Fresno and UNLV, maybe even more so than Boise, even though Boise did have the big game against Oregon. But, they struggled a little when they were at Georgia Southern. So, yeah, UNLV's proven they're a team to beat and a team to be taken seriously. And good win for the Mountain West, in which was not a great week for the Mountain West this week, but that was a very good signature win for them against a power opponent and a power conference team, and that gives UNLV, I think, 2 wins over power conferences. So, you know, it's a good season, good start to the season for the Rebels.
Yeah, no, you and Dane, we did the UNL preview this summer, and you and Dane were both much higher on them, and it seems like it's coming to fruition. I know me personally, I was wrong. I think I predicted them to have 6 wins or something like that, and I was clearly wrong. I was wrong about the game this week as well. Luckily, some of my other picks did a little bit better, but yeah, I picked Kansas, and exactly for the reasons you were talking about. I didn't think Sluka's stats. I think it was something like he's just had a terrible completion percentage, and I didn't feel confident that they were going to be able to pull it out, particularly against Jalen Daniels. I know he had that back injury, but prior to that, he was potentially a all Big 12 performer. So just kudos to the UNLV program. These are I don't want to beat up on the national guys too much, but I was watching, a show we all watch, and it just seems they completely ignore these teams. I saw like the Colorado State highlights like 3 times. UNLV Kansas, by all realistic purposes, is a bigger game on the schedule, a more marquee matchup, and so just kudos to UNLV again, as you touched on, 2 wins against Power Four conference teams, and one of them wasn't even close. I mean, they dominated Houston, so. And if Sluka hasn't gotten going yet, Ricky White hasn't. He's had some good games, but hasn't maybe been as consistent as he would like. Watch out! I mean, if they've gone through some really tough opponents, so should be a fun ride. Obviously, got to finish the season, but the Rebels are a team to look out for, and really, honestly, should be receiving top 25 consideration. Just if we're basing this off a pure body of work. So
100%. And then getting lost in the fold, I think part of that comes back to the Friday night games, which I know Dane's not here to argue the other way. I know last week he had some comments on Friday night games, but that win kind of gets lost in the fold for the whole weekend. I mean, it's I guess it gets all the eyes on Friday because there's only a couple games, but then on Saturday when if people didn't catch it, then kind of the highlights it kind of get skipped over because it was the Friday night game, and they're Saturday evening they're talking about the Saturday game. So I don't know, one of those things.
yeah, yeah, there's a quick turnaround indeed. Moving forward here, and this is a game I will, I'm a little bit passionate about. We had WSU versus Washington. You can hear it in my voice, the Apple Cup. And really, I can't. There's no way I can do this from 100% pure sports writer analysis, and I don't really think the game was played like that. So I'll start with that before I go a little bit fanny here, if that's even a real word. But the first thing I want to say is for the first three quarters, WSU actually outplayed UW, which completely caught me off guard. UW always has a deep program; they're very talented, and through the first three quarters, WSU's defense was controlling the tempo. Mateer was passing the ball well. Parker had a nice. Wayshawn Parker had one really nice run. And as a Cougar fan, you're sitting there thinking like, how good are we? But then again, as always, in the fourth quarter, it seemed like UW like a flip switch. Like, oh crap, we could lose this game. And they, for lack of better terms, completely outplayed WSU in the fourth quarter. They got two interceptions. Their passing game started getting going with Will Rogers. They had a bunch of deep passes. I'm blanking on his name, but WC had one receiver, or UW had one receiver really, really step up. My mistake. I'm blanking on his name
It's
right now.
Giles Jackson, wasn't it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Giles Jackson had like three deep passes. Jonah Coleman was just complete force at running back. I mean, he is huge. He really started to kind of weigh on the Cougs as the game went on. They stayed stout enough, but he was weighing a little bit. But yeah, when it came down to it at the end, Jed Fish ran an option on 4th and 2, which as a WSU fan, I'm really grateful for. But really interesting call because you would think pads to pads, one man to one man, UW probably has more talent than WSU and probably still does, even with this result. Sorry, Coug fans, I'm one of you guys, but that's just the reality. UW's a very talented team, but they went with the option, which is I feel a little gimmicky. And a 6-year Cougar walk on came up and tackled the quarterback and tackled the running back, and sure as hell got us out there with the victory. And now I can have the fun part. Kind of the little fan perspective. I mean, you like if you're not a Coug, you don't understand that this game meant everything. Losing to UW in the Apple Cup broke the Cougar soul a little bit, and it wasn't like the Cougs could have won next year. It had to be this game, and it had to be yesterday. All of a sudden, you're looking at a similar situation to UNLV now. With WSU is 3-0 with a huge win over. Again, I think UW is going to be good. I'm like UW's a good team. Like they need to be respected. Texas Tech might be a little bit less impressive of a victory because Taj Brooks was out and he's their star running back. But again, in a similar situation like UNLV, you have a team here that is now 2 wins over power conferences and is sitting at 3-0. So really, really big stuff for the Cougs. And again, just to explain how like what this means, kind of the Coug community. I was literally working a job. I had this up on my phone. I was driving. I had it up on my phone. I was eating. I had it up on my phone. I went to another job. I had it up on my phone. I missed one play. It was the kickoff to the second half. I literally this is only Coug fans would probably get this and never do this again. And if police officers are listening, I'm sorry. On that 4th and 2, I didn't want to wait any longer. I wanted to hop in my car and get to another job here. And essentially, I literally stopped in the middle of traffic because I was going to watch that play. I did not care at that moment. It was reasonably safe. I was just pulling off my street in a little turn, but I definitely held someone up for 15 seconds completely screamed in my car when they got the stop and looked over and a lady was smiling at the car next to me. Like, what's wrong with this guy? So first off, never do that. I will never do that again. But every once in a while, the rules are meant to be broken. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the passion us Cougar fans had for this game. We feel a little disrespected just nationally. Again, the Cougs and OSU being overlooked, and just I think that's been touched on enough. It's just a huge win for the soul of WSU. Obviously, going back to kind of the more football perspective, they have to finish it out, just like we touched on with UNLV. Some really, really good Mountain West opponents, Pac-12, Pac-6 opponents, and Boise State and Fresno State coming up. Not really sure how I feel about that merger, but that might be a topic for a little later or another day. But just a huge win for the Cougar community. And I want to end with this because I think Jake Dickert said it best. There's a lot of WSU fans and a lot of rivalry matchups that probably like this. You could think UCLA, USC, Oregon, Oregon State. But Dickert said it best. We had to do this not because we hate them, but because we love us. And that's what college sports are about. So I thought that perfect summarized. As always, go Cougs. I think everyone knows I could sit here and talk about this for about 45 more minutes. But let's get to the next game. And just again,
Well, real quick, two things on from the Washington side of that, just real quickly. Yeah, I think I heard Fish talking after the game that he had another play called and called the timeout because they didn't think they had the blocking matchups right, and then switched to that play, and I think first glance at least I think they missed some blocks in there is what he was saying. They didn't match up right, but I think he was definitely regretting that call too. But the main thing with Washington, I think 16 penalties for like 135 yards in that game, something like that. And that Washington's now 132nd in the nation after 3 weeks in penalties per game and yards per game out of 134. So, I mean, they're the third most penalized team in the country. You can't win games against good teams when you're shooting yourself in the foot with penalties. It's just that Washington's got to get better there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And even to end the game, UW in theory could have gotten the ball back with 20, 30 seconds. And, it's college football. Maybe gotten a Hail Mary, won it, and their guys kept jumping off sides. That's eventually will run out the clock. So, yeah, UW definitely has to clean their game up a little bit. I would expect they will. Fish did really, really good things at Arizona. And again, this is a talented team with Will Rogers, with Jonah Coleman, and the receiver that I can just never remember the name of, even though you just
Giles Jackson.
Jackson. Gosh, all right, I'm gonna get that. It's a little tough when you Dunze, McMillan, and Polk last year. But Giles Jackson, I'm gonna get your name because you played a hell of a game. The next game I'm gonna touch on briefly. I think we'll both touch on briefly here is ASU Texas State. I'll start and then kick it over to you to be a little bit shorter. I just want to say, looking at ASU, they are something different. That's a really good Texas State team. Again, I know people may not know that. They have a really good quarterback. I think it's McLeod, really good receiver in Hobart, and a couple other weapons. And Texas State is dangerous passing attack, a dangerous, dangerous offense. And ASU really to fight hard to win this. You're looking at the Sun Devils now. You got Scadaboo, you got Levitt, and all of a sudden, this team is looking legit. They showed heart, they showed balance, and I think the one thing that caught me off guard when watching the highlights, I thought, maybe as a Power Four school, they would have leaned on Scadaboo maybe a little bit more. It seemed like Levitt was making most of the big plays, and that's a really, really good sign for ASU. This team has caught us all off guard. I believe projected to be picked last in the Big 12. I think just nationally they'd completely fallen off the radar, and all of a sudden in 3 games, Kenny Dillingham, they should be a top 25 team. There's not even really a question, at least in the top 30, I guess, to be fair. But they're on the brink of really doing something special, and clearly not the worst team in the Big 12. And again, I don't want to understate it. This is a huge win against Texas State, a huge win. That's a good program. That's a really, really talented football team. So for ASU, they got to keep it going. And as long as Levitt can keep moving the ball on a consistent basis, watch out. Seems like Scadaboo's power and athleticism speaks for itself. So as long as Levitt can keep doing his thing, yeah, ASU could be dangerous. And what's your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, you talk about Kevin McLeod. I mean, I think he was if he wasn't the Sun Belt Player of the Year at James Madison last year, he was definitely all Sun Belt performer. And I mean, James Madison had a lot of good players, and I think we'll probably get into a little bit more of that on the next game we talk about. But yeah, no, Levitt's looked really good, and the thing with ASU is the receivers are good. Jordan Tyson had a monster game in that one, and I mean, and I think he could be a really good player. And then they got a couple of good tight ends. I mean, Harpool's pretty good, and then Shimon Mateer. I don't know if I said that right or not, but their transfer in. I mean, I had him as one of my better tight ends in the SuperWest entering the year, and he's proved to be every bit of it. And I think he's going to be the real deal. So with weapons that receiver and tight end, along with Scattaboo, that offense, Levitt's got a lot of weapons, and I think that they're primed for success. And I think you said it best. They're probably knocking on the door of being ranked.
Yeah, it's unexpected too because they lost Jalen Conyers and Elijah Badger. And those were projected. I mean, two basically their best weapons last year at wide receiver and tight end. So having some good players like Tyson step up obviously helps. You need some playmakers, and but let's not say the same thing like we said about the first two teams. It's early in the season, but for ASU, they've stepped up. I mean, UNLV and WSU, maybe you could have seen this coming. I know, again, going to UNLV, you guys did a little bit, but no one saw this coming for ASU. So really underdog. Sparky's feeling himself a little bit. You know, they like to party down there a little bit out of cousin
They,
and went. So
they got to keep it going through conference play though, so the tests are going to get tougher even. So we'll see how they do.
100%, 100%. And the final or not the final game, but the final game we're going to touch on in depth here before we got a couple of quick hitters following up is going to be UCLA Indiana. I'm going to basically just kick this one to you, Steve. And yeah, what are your thoughts on this one here?
I mean, Indiana's good. I mean, they're not the same Indiana that they were the past couple of years, and I mean, they got a new coach, Kurt Signetti from James Madison. So I mean, a blowout loss to Indiana is not necessarily what you might have thought it was a couple of years ago. And he's got a lot of good players from James Madison, like we just talked about that he took with him from there. The defense for Indiana is fast and physical, and they shut down. I think this was the biggest road conference win for Indiana since 2001. So I mean, this Indiana just doesn't normally go on the road in the Big Ten and beat up teams like that, and they did so to UCLA. And I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of twofold. I think Indiana's a little bit better than people think, and I think UCLA is going to struggle. And I mean, the running attack once again. I mean, it got a little better this game. I think they ran for like 96. Still didn't have 100 yards, but I think a lot of that was Ethan Garber's kind of making things happen with his legs when the pocket broke down, which the pocket broke down a bunch. Indiana had a ton of sacks in that game. So I don't know if that's a good defensive line on the one side or if it's just that UCLA's offensive line is that bad. But the key, I mean, against Hawaii, they couldn't run the ball in week one. They couldn't run the ball in week against Indiana the other day. And this is, like we said, Hawaii, not good against the run historically. And I think Sam Houston ran for like 257 against them yesterday or something like that. So against Hawaii, that is. So, I mean, it's, they haven't been playing world beaters against the run, at least in the Hawaii case, and they couldn't run the ball. And with the part with UCLA is, I mean, in a lot of coaching changes, you get, it was changed for a reason because the prior staff didn't get it done. The team wasn't that good. In UCLA's, it was the opposite. I mean, Chip Kelly was winning. I mean, maybe not up to expectations, but I don't necessarily think he was getting fired right away for the job of taking them to bowl games and keeping them competitive. So he left, and he left. Obviously, in the world of transfers, it's a little different. But the quarterback play was a little empty with Dante Moore moving up to Oregon. But UCLA still got a lot of talent. I mean, and on that defense, they had a lot of people back, especially at linebackers. I mean, they lost a lot of their front four from last year that was dominant, and obviously Danton Lynn went to USC. But the linebacker play has been surprisingly bad for them too, and same thing with the secondary. I mean, Kirkwood hasn't really played what I think. I mean, I've been high on him for the past couple of years, Devin Kirkwood, and he just hasn't really performed up to his abilities. And the offensive play calling, even with you'd think with Eric Bieniemy at offensive coordinator, Deshaun Foster at head coach, that you think you'd have a team that was going to be able to run the ball and be real creative on offense. And through 2 games, it has not been. So it's been kind of a disappointment from the Bruins standpoint, I think, so far. But I'll go my alma mater part there too, and that was a big win for Indiana. I went to IU, and it's good to see them. Like I said, it's been a long time since they've 23 years since they've gotten a win that big on the road. So setting the table for a good run for them, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go to LA and beat the Bruins at anything, it's a big deal. These LA, these maybe not New York so much in college, but these LA teams, these big market teams, there's always talent. There's just so much talent, whether it's coming from local or coming from Arizona or coming from Texas. Like people want to be in LA, and so when you head down there and beat them in that fashion, I mean, it speaks volumes. I've always liked Ethan Garber, so not really sure what exactly the problem is there, but Deshaun Foster clearly has some work being to cut out for him. I'm not going to go ahead and say that UCLA is completely kind of screwed this year. Had they lost to Hawaii, that definitely would have kind of been the reality of the situation here. But again,
And
just
their schedule gets brutal from here on out. I mean, I think in the next 3 they've got Oregon. I don't have it in front of me, but I know they got Oregon coming up. Or they got LSU, Oregon, and Iowa. I think as far as the next 3, and I think they got Michigan coming up in there too. So I mean, they have got a brutal stretch coming up in the and so it could be tough for UCLA. Sorry to interrupt, but keep going with your point.
oh no, you're fine. I didn't really have a point. I was just talking there. Actually, pretty good breakup there. But yeah, seriously, huge win for IU and for UCLA. You don't hit the panic button yet because you're able to eke out that win against Hawaii, but clearly this is not the way they wanted to start their season. So you would imagine that the Bruins will look a little bit better going forward, and if not, then they got some things to address. That's for sure. Next game here, we're moving to quick hitters now. Those are kind of our 4 in-depth games. I guess the first game we'll start with here is Oregon State, and Steve, I'll let you kind of talk about this one here.
Yeah, this was. I mean, this was the game Oregon needed. I mean, and it's the best they've looked all season. This is what we kind of thought Oregon was going to be, possibly against. I mean, you could say Boise State might be the better opponent, but either way, I mean, Oregon State, you got to think at least defensively is probably the best defense, at least entering the season and on paper that Oregon's played so far, and they've looked the best against them. I mean, and the key was 0 sacks. And the first 2 games, that was really all it was. It was sacks, whether it was on the offensive line, whether it was on Dylan Gabriel for holding it too long and not making the right reads. It didn't matter. They were just giving up sacks like crazy, and that was causing them all kinds of problems. That was really the only problem that they were having. Didn't get sacked yesterday, and Gabriel picked apart the Oregon State defense and had another good game. I think Oregon ended up with 500 plus yards, almost 550 total yards. I think 300 on the ground and whatever that'd be on the air, or 300 in the air and whatever over 300 in the air and close to 200 on the ground as well. So good balance. This is the Oregon team. I think a little too early to call them dead so far. After the first 2 weeks that they had, I think they're back and got the kinks out in the non-conference and are ready to go for Big Ten play now.
Yeah, and for me, it's the same question that Oregon every year. They have the talent; they're always good enough. And whether it was Washington twice last year, or going back to when Herbert was there, the loss to ASU, or even some kind of questionable losses to Oregon State, even though they were able to handle them pretty easily this year. It's they got to finish. They always have the talent. It's not really a question of that. They got to find a way to finish. So I really just hope they can keep this going forward. If you're a West Coast football fan, obviously the Ducks being good is good for everyone. And so, yeah, just a nice win. I think you touched on most of kind of the key players. Whittington had a nice run. Gabriel, obviously, his best performance of the year. And, for the Ducks, their defense stepped up. I'm not going to say that Oregon State's offense is super good or anything like that, but they found a way to get the job done today. And it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen, and the Beavers cared, so the Ducks found a way off to a hot start. And whatever we're calling this rivalry game this year, it's like the Washington's football team. I don't even know if they have a name. But hell, the Oregon won the game, so got to keep the momentum. But for the Ducks, they cannot avoid another slip up to the Beavers. That would have been embarrassing. That actually would have been embarrassing. So, and then the next game I'm going to talk about here is going to be Cal San Diego State, and I just I think a lot of people would want me to start with Cal, and I will. I think they had their huge win against Auburn last week and kind of proved their point. I'm a little disappointed in San Diego State's offense. Couldn't really score against Oregon State the week prior. Couldn't score against Cal. I do think both those defenses are solid enough, but outside of Marquez Cooper, it feels like they literally have nothing on offense. Sean Lewis came in, and this is supposed to be fast offense and just all good stuff, and they can't score the ball. If I'm not expecting them to come out and win quickly, but this was a really good program a couple of years ago. Now they literally can't score points; they're getting blown out every game. And the only touchdown they really scored against Cal, they'd one really really nice drive late in the game. That was it. Everything else was just pretty much a blowout. And it wasn't like Cal played their best game either. If you're looking at Cal, they won, so that's good. But it was a trap game. Obviously, you're going to be a little bit less hyped about San Diego State after going down to SEC territory and getting a victory. But if you're looking at Cal, Fernando Mendoza did his thing. I think it's Isaiah Hunter, if I'm correct. I could be wrong there. Is stepping up as a young wideout. And then they have really kind of depth in the backfield, having their backup running back come in and run for more than 100 yards. So you're looking at this all without Jaden Ott. And Cal's looking damn good. I mean, they're looking damn good. Again, I was really impressed with them against Auburn. They again, San Diego State has had some success the past couple of years, so they could have snuck in and maybe made it a little bit closer. Cal didn't allow that to happen. They whooped their butt and got out of there with a convincing win. And if you're talking, this is probably too much because they still have to face Miami in the ACC. I think they got Florida State pretty soon here, and even though they're 0-3, there's obviously talent on that roster. So yeah, I'm thinking Cal's still got some work to do, but just really, really off to a good start. And they've shown they can hang with everyone. And they've also not played down to the level of their competition. Again, maybe a slight drop off yesterday versus how they played against Auburn, but really ultimately when it's said and done, I think won the game by like 21 points. And when San Diego State did score that fourth quarter touchdown, they got the game to about 14 points, and Cal instantly went down the field and scored the ball. And that's the type of stuff you need if you're going to put a good team away and say, screw any upset, let's just get it done here. And the Golden Bears did that. And I was like, there's probably a nicer analogy than what I'm thinking, but when you got someone on the ropes, swing. Just keep swinging until they're down. Don't let them catch their breath. And that's what Cal did. San Diego State got that one touchdown, and Cal said, "Nope, we're going to go score again," and that was that. So,
That's what you need. That's what you need to do as a good team. Yeah, for sure. And then the one more game I wanted to touch base real quick on is BYU Wyoming. BYU now 3-0 off to a really good start. Jake Ratzlaff's looked really, really good. Wyoming still struggling. I mean, they just and again, Harrison Whaley still was not there, but Svoboda. I mean, he struggled passing, and I think he was a leading rusher with like 32. Well, on the other hand, Ratzlaff led the way for BYU rushing and was really good throwing the ball. And BYU off to a good 3-0 start. I think that's kind of surprising some people, especially the win over SMU last week, and the Wyoming 0-3, maybe a little surprising too, especially the loss against Idaho last week. So.
Yeah, the maybe obviously like you touched on Harrison Whaley being out hurts, but maybe sometimes good coaches just make it look easy. Wyoming's probably not the easiest place to recruit, and without Craig Bull, clearly you're seeing the transition period. I mean, they're 0-3, and granted, Idaho is a good FCS team, but they had no business losing to Idaho. They needed to get that done.
Yep.
And then, as you mentioned, I got to call myself out. I've been fair weather on Keilani Sataki, but he got his team to bounce back this year, and now they're 3-0. I still think of beating Wyoming anytime is not a gimme. And again, just
that was at Wyoming too. So
yeah, so I can't sing songs yet because I need Wyoming. I need Wyoming to get a win. out of respect. But yeah, just a really, really good start for the Cougars, the Blue Cougars, I should say. We'll give them the Cougs. How about that? And then I guess the final game we're going to touch on here is Arizona K State. I personally didn't get to see this, but I'm gonna speak for Dane. Dane, come on and tell me if I'm wrong next week. I know he's been disappointing their defense the week prior. He's really upset with their offense, kind of the offensive system this week, and really just getting blown out in Manhattan's for a team that did so good last year is not what they expected. With Fafita and McMillan, I think this team can always compete. I mean, when you have two stars at the college level and a decent enough line, that's going to give you a shot. But obviously, the Wildcats would like to do a little bit better. I'm not sure if you were able to catch any of this one. If not, we can kind of just move on here.
I saw the very end of it. That was about it, though, and the score. So it looked like a disappointing game for Arizona, and I think that they're going to struggle in the Big 12. I mean, at least right now, there's against the good teams, especially. I mean, you got Utah, you got Arizona State stepping it up now, or Oklahoma State, obviously. I don't know if West Virginia's on their schedule, so that's another one that's. I mean, West Virginia, I think, could probably do some damage against them too if they don't get things figured out quickly.
Yeah, and then I guess before we get out of here, kind of, do you have any final thoughts on the college football landscape? I know we just had the new Pac-6, I guess, Mountain West hybrid thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good topic for another conversation, another show. But I definitely don't think that that's done. I mean, I don't think it's going to end as the Pac-6. I think there's a few other teams that are definitely gonna head that way as well. I think UNLV probably could be a possibility. I think New Mexico State even. They're a little down in football this year, but they've been better in the past. They could be another potential. I don't necessarily know what they would bring to the table, but they're also they think they're in Conference USA or something now, so they're whatever they're in with Western Kentucky, and I mean it's just not a that's not a good fit for them geographically wise. So I don't know. I don't think it's done, and I think who the Pac 12, whatever it ends up being, who they end up taking, I think. I mean, it's slim. I mean, you're not getting Cal and Stanford going back there. I mean, otherwise they I wouldn't think at least. So I don't know. I mean, it's yeah, where they get their teams from is yet to be seen. But obviously the Mountain West is in there, and I don't know if any of the some of our there's some really good FCS programs in the West. Whether any of them are making the jump to FBS anytime soon or planning on it. Perhaps some of those could be options, but I don't know. I think it's not done for sure, and I don't know where it's gonna end up going though too. So I mean, I guess when Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC, then maybe that falls apart, and you get Cal and SMU and Stanford heading to the Pac, whatever it is at that point, Pac 18 or something like that. By that point, so you got the Big 12 with 18, the ACC with eight, or the ACC done, the Big East or Big 10, and SEC with about 18 or 20, and yeah. So you get those four conferences, and then everybody else. But I don't know. We'll see.
Not yet, and just kind of playing off that. I think I'm again. We'll probably discuss this more in depth in another episode, but I feel it's a safe move for WSU and Oregon State. Probably a smart move. I think in the Seattle Times they wrote it was like underwhelming, and I can see that. But at the same time, after being left alone as a power two, you just needed someone. You need some stability. You needed something where you couldn't just be left out again. So I get it for Fresno State, Boise State, Colorado State, and
What's it
who
bringing to them? That's what, and yeah, for Colorado, yeah, the Colorado State, Fresno State, Boise State, and I mean, what are they getting at? Like that's my question now. Is like how is the new Pac-6 better than the Mountain West they left? Which is kind of where the question comes. That's my serious take on it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said. If you get an SMU, a Cal, or Stanford in some weird kind of turn of events, then you have a legit best of the rest conference, which I think
That's
would
true.
be a little step up from the Mountain West. But as you mentioned, there's no guarantee. That takes a lot of dominoes to fall. And if that doesn't happen, then why didn't WSU and Oregon State just join the Mountain West? Let's not just call it like the
Yeah,
pack whatever. It's just like that. Mountain West hybrid new thing. But yeah, we'll touch on that another day. Notice how we didn't talk about Colorado State because it wasn't that huge of a game. Obviously, it's a rivalry matchup, and both teams wanted to win. But I think if you watch anything national, they spent 30 minutes on it. So I think we'll let them cover that.
Yeah, it wasn't that
Any
good of a game.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's other games out there. I'm glad that
it was two pretty bad teams playing each other. That's all I'll say.
yeah. Talking a bunch of crap too.
Yeah, yep.
For sure. You got any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, no. Just good week of college football. We'll get into conference play a little more each week, so it'll be good.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, conference play coming up. Steve just said that's kind of the end of my creativity for the day. So this has been Super West on Sundays. Like and subscribe. It'd be appreciated. And guys, thank you for tuning in as always. For Steve, I'm Nick, and see you guys later.